Episode 131. On today's show, we'll be talking about iPadOS and iOS 16. What devices are compatible? We'll break that down for you. And we'll be talking about audio quality, bit depth, bit rate, sample rate, aliasing. What do all these things mean? Do you need to care? All of that, of course, and a bucket of fish on GarageBand Weekly. Let's do it.
GarageBand Weekly, GarageBand Weekly, GarageBand Weekly.
Oh, indeed. It is GarageBand Weekly here on Studio Live today, and I hope you are doing well, because it's the end of the weekend for most folks, and we're going to crack on and get into some GarageBand stuff. I don't know why I loaded up the P bass here. I felt like playing a little bass. Let's get some funky bass going on here to start the show, shall we? What key should we be in here? Why don't we go into let's go into a G major. I love me some, actually no, G major. G major key. We'll play use the autoplay here and just lay down a little bit of a bass groove, shall we? In G. I like the autoplay bass grooves. Oh, yeah. That's pretty funky. We'll play around with that a bit later, because I've decided that I want to make some music. You know why? Because in the news and notes, you're going to find out why. Because it is Make Music Day, World Music Making Day around the world, and there's some events going on, and here in Australia there's some stuff happening. In fact, let's just jump through over to that and talk about it to start with. So Make Music Day Australia, here it is, June 21, a worldwide celebration of music. So all around the world, people will be getting out and about and creating music. And even if you can't be out and about, you can create music in your own home, in your own studio, in your home studio, wherever you happen to be. I'm actually going to go into the city here and check out some buskers. I've heard on the grapevine our friend of the show, Samantha Edge, might be out there playing the piano and singing up a storm. So yeah, I'm going to take my gear and get some footage there. So stay tuned to all the socials. If you're not following me on all the places, go to studiolivetoday.com and you'll be able to find me and see what's going on there, because more music needs to be created all around the world. Do you not agree? I think so, and you need to have fun with your music. G'day to the folks who are here live. We'll crack into the rest of the news and notes that we have for you here in just a moment. But before that, we would be remiss not to say g'day to all the cool people who are here. G'day, Thomas Christ. Hello to you. G'day, Mark, Bro, Tom, and Co. That rhymes. G'day, Master Singleton. Hello to the one and only Jade Star. We've got Joe and Barry. Glenn here. Gary Hubs. Live from the parking lot? Maybe. We'll find out later. G'day, Cody Bradley. Thank you for dropping on by. I've missed your name. There you are. Cody Bradley. And if anyone has any questions, all you need to do is just put a big Q, a big fat Q, or the word question, preferably in caps. It's the one time I'll let you use all caps. Throw that at the start of your question or your comment, and I will answer any of your questions as we go through. G'day, Patrick Chandler. I hope you're doing very well. I hope everyone is doing well here and ready to talk about GarageBand and GarageBand-related topics and music making and all the rest. I'm wearing my Rangers jersey today. The Rangers were knocked out of the Stanley Cup Finals, which is probably a good thing, because the way Colorado are crushing the Tampa Bay Lightning, the Rangers would be losing like 12-13 zip each game if they were the ones in the Stanley Cup Finals. But I'm still going to watch. It's a train wreck, but you can't look away. Let's talk news and notes of the week. So the first thing I've got here for you is that you may have been hearing about the EU wanting to force every maker of phones and devices to use USB-C. Now, this is basically just Apple. So pretty much every other phone manufacturer, all the other major ones, if you're using Samsung, the Google Pixels, all the other manufacturers, they've moved to USB-C. It's pretty much the universal standard, except our good old GarageBand creating iPhones and iPads that use the Lightning port. So why this is important is that Apple are working at the moment on the iPhone 14. And of course, their lead is 4 to 5 years. So they're probably already working on the iPhone 15. And the word on the street is that they're pretty much going to have to go to either portless or go to USB-C, because Lightning is not going to comply with what the EU are putting forward here. And it looks pretty certain. It hasn't all been signed, sealed, and delivered, but it looks pretty certain to happen. And to add to that, some US senators have also jumped on the bandwagon and said, yeah, we want to do the same in the US. Yeah. So, there's likely to be a bill at least pushed forward in the US to do this. Now, I don't know how politics works. I don't do politics, but I'm sure there's some things that have to go on through the Senate, and a bill gets passed and it gets debated and whatever. And there's probably people with money ties into other people with money ties, and it may not happen. Who knows? But it's pretty clear that across the world, we do need to have this standardization. So what they were talking about is that there's 11,000 tons of e-waste just in cables. And if you look in anyone's drawer, like if I look in this drawer, it's disgusting. I've got micro USB, I've got mini USB, I've got USB-A, USB-B, a bunch of lightning, a bunch of broken stuff, some HDMI, some mini HDMI. It is ridiculous. Knowing how to plug something into something else is kind of nuts. It is getting better because pretty much everything is USB-C or Thunderbolt. Don't get me started on that, because there is a difference, and sometimes you can't see it, but there is a difference. So yeah, at the moment, we're in this sort of limbo land where we're not quite sure where things are going. Will the next iPhone be USB-C, the iPhone 14? Well, it's pretty deep into development. Remember, these come out usually September each year. So to do an about face and a pivot and put it on, and some people have said, maybe it'll have both. You and me both know that Apple ain't putting both. They're not going to put two different ports on an iPhone. That would take up too much space. It would cost them a whole bunch. The other thing is that Apple Lightning, Apple do actually make some money from that. So the numbers aren't released, but it's something like $3 to $4 per Lightning cable that are sold if they have that MFI. And that's why you need to buy cables that are MFI compliant, made for iPod compliant, because it means that they've actually got the Apple, well, if they're adapter, they've got the Apple chip in them, meaning that they won't get bricked by updates to iOS. So yeah, we'll see how. They already know how to do it, so it shouldn't take long, says Mark. The new iPhone will be USB-C. It's time. There you go. Jade Star's called it. I don't know if they'll be able to get it into the iPhone 14, but I'm almost certain that by the iPhone 15, by next year, 2023, yeah, don't go out and buy a whole bunch of Lightning gear. That's all I'll say about that. Let's talk real quickly about cryptocurrency, because I don't understand cryptocurrency. I've never got into crypto and NFTs and the like, but you would have seen in the news that there's been a pretty significant crash in crypto, in Bitcoin, and it's easy to have a bit of schadenfreude and all the crypto bros that were, posing next to the Lambos and the private jets to see them crying into their cornflakes. It's not the worst thing in the world, but the sad thing is, like most things, a lot of people have been manipulated into cryptocurrency by, Matt Damon's out there saying, you need to be brave, fortune favors the brave, and it's like, Matt, just go back to making those movies where people are chasing you all the time. But what does this mean for musicians and NFTs for music? I still think, and I know that Vortex over at Mobile Music Pro, I know a lot of people I chat to are still pretty bullish on the fact that but the whole blockchain technology and NFTs, non-fungible tokens, are going to be viable, and they are going to do something, and it means that digital art can actually be monetized and be supported. I don't disagree with that. I just think it's early days. It's really early days. This is like the early days of me when I was on bulletin boards and chat rooms and I was chatting to people, and they're like, why on earth, why would you go onto a computer to chat to other people using text when you can pick up the phone and just call those same people? And I said, it's just fun. It's cool. And people didn't get it. So I'm not saying that that's not going to happen with the whole blockchain situation. But at the moment, yeah. Sell your Doge coins now, I guess. Yeah, maybe. Although Elon Musk still says he's all in on Doge. Whatever that means. No, let's not talk Elon Musk, please. G'day, Friggsy. Just jumping in for a few minutes before bed. Yeah, it's very late for our friends in the UK and Europe. Let's talk about some more practical stuff, shall we? Some more now stuff. Because, yeah, we do have the new iPhones that will come out in September. I mean, they're going to come. The only potential for them not coming is supply chain issues, which we know that there will be some of. But I'm thinking that Apple, better than any other company, has been able to manage their supply chain. So we should see new iPhones, the iPhone 14, being launched in September. And along with that will come iOS and iPadOS 16. And I did 2 videos during the week, and I've linked them down in the description, so you can check those out if you need to know this info. But there's one video here all about iPadOS and the compatible devices. And we have the iPad Pros, all the models. So the iPad Pro version 1, it snuck its way in, which is pretty cool because I got one of those. iPad Air 3rd gen and later. We'll talk about that in a moment. iPad 5th gen and later, and the iPad mini 5th gen and later. So for those of me who love the nostalgia and the awesomeness of our iPad Air 2s, me and Patrick together, we will no longer be able to have support for these. So iPadOS 15 is where this one will end. So we'll talk a little bit more about the ramifications of that in a moment. And the other one that, the other video that I did is this one here, which is iPhones. And same sort of problem here. The 6S, the classics. I know Gary Hubbs rocked the 6S for so long, and I know many people did. Andy Goldsby, myself, I made my first EP in GarageBand on an iPhone 6S Plus. And guess what? No longer be supported. Now, when we say this, keep in mind, no longer supported is not the end of the world, right? No longer supported just means that you're not going to get the new features in iOS 16, but it does mean that you'll still be able to use iOS 15. I've still got device. I've got my iPhone 5S that's using iOS 12. That's still getting security updates. That's still a pretty secure operating system. So Apple, even though, we'll talk about it in a minute, but even though they're kind of ending the life of some of these devices, if you're using them right now and they're working for you, they'll still work for you. I think people get a little bit carried away thinking about, Dan Baker's probably not even concerned by this at all because he doesn't care about the iOS updates. So there's not a whole lot there for musicians. So don't lose your sleep. Don't lose any sleep over the fact that you can't have that. Yes, we will talk about, hello, Crow on a Wire. We will talk bitrate in a moment. We're gonna crack that nut for sure. iOS compatibility. If you want to know all the details, check out the links down in the description. We've already talked about the Make Music Australia, so again, keep an eye on the channel on the socials. Go to studiolive.today.com. Make sure you follow me there because I'll do some live stuff. We'll have some fun later. Hopefully I'll be able to share some videos and photos on Instagram and do some live streaming directly there if there's some cool buskers that'll agree to let me put them on the channel. The last thing I wanted to talk about is, interestingly, I did a show with Mike from Creative Source a long time ago, all about music and AI, artificial intelligence and music. And I wanted to throw this out to you folks as well, because as music creators, like we're seeing around the world that self-driving cars are being sort of touted, that automation is costing people jobs and it's bad and it's terrible. Yet at the same time, we want all the things better and faster and cheaper. What do you think about that with music? There was an interesting story this week. There was an AI bot, a chat bot called LaMDA that Google were testing. And there was an engineer this week that was testing this LaMDA. You can go look it up, LaMDA. I don't have any links there, but you can go check it out. There was this Google engineer that was concerned that this chat bot was becoming sentient because it was saying things like, yes, I do feel, I am a human, I do have emotions, and I feel very sad. And I'm like, this is it. Judgment Day, Terminator 2. It's all happening. Skynet, let's go. But apparently this Google engineer raised it with Google and is now no longer working for them. So conspiracy theorists read between the lines. What's going on there? It's an interesting story anyway. I heard about it on This Week in Tech. So if you like your tech stuff, Leo Laporte's show This Week in Tech, very cool stuff. But go and read about that. It's a little bit weird and scary. Really, if you actually break it down, it's just learning behaviors that it's basically getting a whole bunch of human behaviors and just mimicking them. So it's not as creepy as it sounds. But are we getting closer? Are we getting closer to the end? Who knows? Maybe. So that's our news and notes for the week. G'day to anyone who has joined us here. Gregory O'Sullivan, goodbye, Gen 1 SE. So yes, as you'll notice, we probably didn't go through the list there as much there, but you can see there that because it's the iPhone 8 and above, no 7s, no 6s, no first gens, and no iPod Touch. Now, there's been a bit of back and forth about whether, because the iPod Touch, this one here, is basically built around, it's like a mini 6S or like an SE. So it's got the same chips as an SE. So I think it's gone. I think it's over. But hey, it still runs iOS 15. I've loaded up GarageBand on this little sucker, and we're going to make a song soon. I need to get my stuff together because, to be honest, now that I use an iPad Pro most of the time, I don't really have a lightning-based music rig set up to kind of show stuff on. So I need to do that. Wilson Maid, hello to you. You're late. Yes, please report to the principal's office. I saw El Sinuous. Hello to you. G'day, Leela. And is it Joe Glenn? Is it your birthday today? That's pretty cool. It's probably time if you're still rocking an iPhone 6s, it is probably time for an upgrade, similar to an iPad Air 2. But there's people that are hanging on to this stuff. I see people walking around with iPhone 4s still with the old connectors. So don't knock it. Like, if it does the job. What do we say around here? Create or work with whatever you have right now. Artificial intelligence. I've been accused of that. That AI story was reported over here. Yeah, so it's been pretty big news. It's pretty good. So Gregory O'Sullivan does interesting stuff. You do things with not robots, but with like sampled AI vocalists. It's really interesting, actually. You send me an email, Greg, because I'd like to know what you do. I think people would be interested in that because you create some pretty cool tunes and amazing music, and you're not a human in sight in terms of your vocals. So I don't know the vocalists of us in the audience are going to be a little bit nervous about that, but it is very cool. Very, very cool stuff. After artificial intelligence comes artificial stupidity. Not that we need more of that, right? And Trevor Bear has an iPhone 5, the OG. Love it. Love it a lot. Joe's still sober. It's your birthday and you're still sober. Very cool. Good stuff. So let's move on. Am I a bit hot on the audio? I am way too hot. If I've been clipping the audio throughout the start of this, I apologize. Let me just drop that down a little bit. There you go. That's a bit better. It's hard. I know that Jade's got a new mixer on the way, and the mixer I'm using here at the moment doesn't have a compressor or a limiter on it, and it's the biggest problem that I have right now is that trying to get enough volume coming through so you can hear me nicely, but also not clipping my audio. Yeah, it's a challenge. To the challenge. No clipping? All right, that's cool. That is good. Yes, the robots are definitely taking over. Let's talk about our feature topic, shall we? So, audio quality and GarageBand. What's the deal? Why do you need to know about it? What's important to know about? Well, I thought we'd have that discussion here because I get questions a lot from people saying, what do I export my songs as? What's a WAV file? What's an M4A file? What's a sample rate? What is bit rate? What is bit depth? These are all terms that can sound super confusing. If you want the simple answer, I'm going to tell you now, but then we'll go into the details. Record at least 44.1 kilohertz for your sampling rate and 24-bit audio if you can. Whenever you're exporting audio, always export as a WAV file, uncompressed, and don't ever export as a compressed MP3 or M4A. If you listen to nothing else and just do that and don't care about all the details and the nerdy stuff behind the scenes, you'll be 100% cool. But why don't we talk about the nerdy stuff? Because I know that some of you will want to know a little bit more information. Or maybe there's stuff you already know, or maybe there's bits you know and bits that you're unsure on. So we're going to talk about analog to digital conversion first of all. So if you're using... I don't have one within reach. If you're using an audio interface, let's bring one up here. Let's go to my gear guide, because let's be completely shameless and self-promoting here. If I go to my Studio Live Today gear guide at studiolivetoday.com/gear, and we go and we grab any audio interface you grab. So let's go with the Steinberg UR22C, because that's my interface of choice that I'm using right now. I've got it plugged into my iPad. It's my go-to. What these have is analog inputs. So all audio is analog, meaning that it is audio that we hear with our ears. It is existing in the real world. It is not digital, it is analog. The problem is our computers, our iPads and our iPhones and all of our devices are digital, meaning that they only communicate in a series of ones and zeros. They are digital. So in order to, before we even talk about things like sample rate and bit rate and bit depth, we need to understand the concept of analog to digital conversion, AD conversion. You've probably heard of AD/DA converters. So your audio interface, the difference between a quality audio interface and a kind of crappy one is generally the quality of these inputs on the front here, making sure you get a nice clean signal for your microphone or your guitar or your line out or whatever it is. And then the converter is the chip that sits inside there that takes all of those analog sounds and converts them into digital, converts them into ones and zeros that a computer can understand. So the way that it does that is it grabs those analog signals, it converts them, and it takes snapshots of that information. So there's two different things we need to talk about, which is sample rate and bit depth. And they're the two kind of things. And I'll explain both of those as we go through here because they are different. They are similar, yet different. To explain these, there is a fabulous video. I don't actually use any Isotope products, would you believe, but I've stolen their video. And when I say stolen, I've linked to it. So it's linked down below here. And I thought I would show you this to understand. In fact, why don't we go to sample rate first? Because sample rate is kind of the first concept that we have here. So let's talk about human hearing. Humans can hear up to about 20 kilohertz, 20,000 hertz. That's the highest sound we can hear. And that's like mosquito sound. Like that's that ringing in your ear that you're going to get. As you age, the top end of your range normally decreases. So I can really only hear like 15 kilohertz, 16 kilohertz. And as I get older, it'll get worse and worse. So those high frequencies kind of go away. And unfortunately, sometimes you get hearing loss where the lower frequencies start going away. And that's where people need like hearing aids and support there. But I thought this graph demonstrated this really well because the way that it works in terms of a wave. So if you think of a sine wave, it's got its positive and its negative amplitude. So it's a wave like that, meaning that in order to sample every frequency, because we can hear up to 20 kilohertz, you need to do it at least 40 kilohertz to have enough headroom to be able to capture all of that. If you only did it at 20 kilohertz, anything over 10 kilohertz wouldn't be captured. And if you're familiar with old school audio where we used to sample at like 8 kilohertz, 11 kilohertz, 22 kilohertz, you'd remember that you get that really compressed AM radio sound, that it doesn't have any top end. It's really it's only got a very small range of sounds there. So that's what your sample rate is doing. It needs to be at least 40 kilohertz so that we can actually gather, so that it can capture all of the different frequency ranges that you can get in there. This one is actually really cool. The reason that we, instead of going to 40 kilohertz, we go to 44.1 is in those analog to digital converters, there is actually a low pass filter. So you're probably familiar with a high pass filter or a low cut filter that reduces and removes the rumble. So this microphone, for instance, and my board here, they both have high pass filters, meaning that they can take out all that rumble. Your analog to digital converter has the opposite. It has the filter that actually filters out those top end sounds. The reason being is that if it allowed, say, a 25, so if you're recording at 44.1 kilohertz and you try to record in at really high frequency, 25 kilohertz, you'll get this aliasing effect and it'll sound distorted, it'll sound crappy. So what a good quality analog to digital converter does is it has that filter. And the reason that we don't have it at 40 kilohertz, we have it up here at 44.1, is it means that it can sample sounds all the way up to 22.05 kilohertz. And it means that it can have a gentler slope for that filter. So it can start filtering things out from up there rather than having to have this sharp slope there. So it gives you a little bit of room. And if you're thinking, well, why would we want 96 kilohertz or 192 kilohertz? Most people wouldn't, for that very reason. So basically, when people get carried away and they're like, you got to do 92, you got to do 96 or 192 kilohertz, it's really only required if you are sampling very high frequencies. Or the other thing they talked about in this very excellent video from Isotope is if you're pitch shifting. So have you ever noticed that if you record something and you pitch shift, when it goes slower, it starts losing quality? Well, that's because it's missing those samples. The sampling rate is too low. It's not actually collecting those samples and taking those snapshots. So you need to be able to have a higher sample rate. So there's a really good explanation they show there where at 96 kilohertz, even if you slow it down to half, it's still taking the same as like 48 kilohertz. So it's giving you that extra room if you're doing very specific particular sampling and sound. So there's your sample rate. And we're now going to talk about bit depth now. There are two different concepts here. There is bit depth and there is bit rate. We're talking bit depth. Bit rate is about compressed audio, and we'll talk about that in a moment. So bit depth is your 24-bit. So that's your 16-bit or your 24-bit. And this is about your dynamic range. So the reason that we want to use higher bit rate is it does a couple of things, as you can see there. We get a lower noise floor and we get more dynamic range. You can see at 24-bit, we get 144 decibels of dynamic range. At 16-bit, we only get 96 decibels of dynamic range. Now, you could argue that with today's modern music, do you need dynamic range? Well, I hope the answer is that yes, you still do. A lot of music these days, though, doesn't really benefit from that. But if you're doing something where you've got a really quiet part and you've got a really loud part, you want the maximum amount of dynamic range that you can get. And that's why recording at 24-bit is such an advantage for you. You will get better quality audio because you'll have less noise in it. You'll be able to turn it up louder with less noise without clipping or distorting your signal. and you'll have more dynamic range to play with so that your songs are not going to be squished, compressed sausage waveforms. You can have all that lovely up and down there without actually having that. So the answer is pretty simple. Use 24-bit audio whenever and wherever you can. And you might have heard me talk about different audio interfaces. And the reason, if we go, and I don't mean to pick on particular companies, Behringer, but the reason that I would go with something like a Focusrite or a Focusrite Scarlett or a Steinberg or an M Audio is that if you go with a real budget, we're going to pick on the Behringer UM2 here, because a lot of people go, I want to get the cheapest possible audio interface. I'm going to pay $45 and get myself a Euphoria UM2. Here's the problem with this. The analog to digital converter in this is lower quality. The input there, the microphone preamp, is lower quality. And most importantly, as we just looked at there, this can only do 16-bit. So what we were showing before in this one here, this one can only do 16 bits. So you're only getting a maximum of 96 decibels of dynamic range with that one. Whereas if you go with a Focusrite Scarlett or the Steinberg or another interface that offers 24-bit recording or even up to 32-bit floating, which don't even worry, but yes, you can use 32-bit. It does exist, but really doesn't do much. 24 bits where it's at. Then yeah, you're going to pay a little bit more, but you're going to get much better quality audio. And you want your audio going in to be the best possible quality. You want to start with the best possible quality you can, and then you can go down from there. Excuse me, getting all choked up about bit rate and bit depth. So a really cool explanation of this. So if you're still confused, if you're like, I still don't get it, Johns, what are you talking about? So sampling rate is how many snapshots. So consider that like the frames per second. So if you're a gamer or if you use video cameras, if you see something at 24 frames a second, that's that movie sort of feel. It's a little bit sort of floaty. 30 frames a second is like the sharp quality you'll get on YouTube. 60 frames a second is like that ultra realistic look that you get from sort of modern smartphones, up to like 100 frames per second, which is that super smooth thing that you'll get in gaming. So your sampling rate is similar to that, similar to the number of frames you're getting. Whereas the bit depth is like the resolution. That's like your megapixels. So if you were taking something like you've got a camera, like a digital camera, if it's like 1 megapixel, you know what that looks like compared to something that's like got 30 megapixels. It's got a whole lot more dynamic range for things like color and resolution. It's the same with audio. It's got more dynamic range for your audio the higher you go up there. The one final thing I wanted to talk to is bit rate. Now, people use bit depth and bit rate interchangeably. They're actually completely different. So bit rate is what you actually get in a compressed audio file. So did I bring up my my video here? I thought I paused it at the spot. Yeah, I did. So I've got a video here, which I've linked down below, which is compressed versus uncompressed files. What's the difference? And this shows here the stereo bit rate of 320 kilobits per second. So this is that number that you see when you compress audio. Now, what audio compression is doing is it's reducing the file size by removing some of those frequencies, some of those sounds that we can't hear. So the reason that when you hear something that's compressed, it doesn't sound clear is because you're cutting down those frequencies. It's removing a lot of the low and the top end that it thinks you won't hear and you won't notice, and it's leaving a lot of that mid-range. So it's why an MP3 or an M4A file can sound kind of mid-rangey and kind of gross sometimes. So the only rule here is don't use compressed audio unless you have to. Reasons why you'd use a compressed audio file is, say you're emailing a song that you just want someone to listen to. Export it as an MP3 or an M4A and email them a copy. That's totally cool. If you are, what's another example? I can't think of too many. Yeah, that's basically it. If you're sharing it, if you have the lowest possible file size, you can do that. If you're doing anything else with it, if you're uploading it to SoundCloud or slaps.com, if you're releasing it, my goodness, the people that I talk to when I find out that they're releasing through DistroKid and they're using an MP3 file, especially like a 128 kilobit per second MP3 file, yeah, it's not cool. And especially if you're adding these to video. I was chatting to someone this week that was creating videos, and they were saying, how do I get the best quality audio? And I said, make sure that you actually export as a WAV file. And they said, well, doesn't it compress it with a video anyway? And the answer is yes. And you know what? Spotify compresses too. YouTube compresses too. But you don't want double compression. And that's the thing. If you take a compressed file that you've already compressed by changing it from a WAV to an MP3 or an M4A, and then you upload that to a platform like YouTube or like SoundCloud or anywhere else, it's going to recompress it. So then you're getting double compression. It can end up sounding, if you ever have that problem where your song just sounds lifeless, it sounds like the energy's been sucked out of it, it's probably because it's been compressed multiple times. So take the best quality. Now, the only difference between, if you're in the Apple ecosystem, the only difference between Apple and others is that MP3 is a proprietary codec. I can't remember who owns it now. It's changed hands a bunch of times. So that's used in some platforms. M4A is Apple's codec. So they're both compression formats. They both do very similar things. They're just called different things and they use slightly different technology. Most playback platforms now will play both MP3 and M4A. So anytime you see M4A or MP3, they're pretty much interchangeable. The main difference is that M4A is the Apple codec and then MP3. You'll also see something called Apple Lossless, which is very similar to WAV or to AIF. The reason I'd say steer clear of that and keep it as WAV is that pretty much every platform is going to support a WAV file. Some platforms won't like things like FLAC files or AIF files or Apple lossless files. So I say stay with WAV wherever you can. So I hope that's helped out. I know a lot of you would have already known that. I know a lot of you would know some of that, and maybe you got a nugget or two that can help you out. Does any of it matter? Not really. As long as you remember those few rules that we mentioned at the start, which is that whenever you're selecting your sampling rate, be consistent. 44.1 kilohertz at least at the minimum. 48 kilohertz is fine, especially if you're using video. 24-bit audio. You can still get away with 16-bit, but why would you? Why would you want to compress that dynamic range when you can? And always export as a WAV file. Always export your audio as uncompressed. You'll get the best quality audio every time. Hopefully that helped. G'day to other folks who have dropped on in. G'day to Russ8889. Hello to The Mix Club. G'day to Dan Ekberg. Congrats, Fritzy. Over 10,000 streams on Dirty Money. Kicker. Yeah. Very cool, Friggsy. Friggsy's got a great song called Dirty Money, which, did you record? No, Friggsy's not a GarageBand. Friggsy's very cool because he rocks up to GarageBand Weekly. I don't think you use GarageBand at all. Yeah, I keep seeing something about 32-bit float, but I just stick to 24. Yeah, 32-bit float is... I haven't even done enough research to give you a proper explanation. It's slightly more, it gives you slightly more dynamic range, and some people swear by it, but yeah, everyone I've talked to that's sort of pro audio people say, look, if it's there and you select it, it's no harm, no foul. It's going to give you a bigger audio file, and it's kind of not that useful. So yeah, 24-bit 44.1 is right for most folks in my experience. G'day, Dwight Bailey. Thank you for dropping on by, my friend. I hope you are doing well. Did I see any others? The Mix Club says my MIDI controller and hard drive and guitar amp bit the dust. Yeah, so the Mix Club, you had something that happened in the stream yesterday, didn't it? In Your Music Live, something went down that you had some problems in your studio. So I'm sorry. Always bad to hear that. Yeah, never like that. Never like that. Definitely going to have to rewatch this video. Yeah, look, there's some interesting concept. Do watch the video that I've got linked in the description, because that is an excellent explanation. I'll jump over to a little bit of it here. So it's the one that I was showing here. It's got some excellent explanations. So it's this dude from Isotope. What's his name? I'll give him a shout out. Sam Luce. So yeah, he explains it beautifully. The diagrams are excellent. So it explains all about how sine waves work. It explains that sample rate stuff that I was showing there before. Shows you that bit depth. That's the best bit depth graph I've ever seen, because that explains exactly what we're talking about there. Lower noise floor, more dynamic range. Like 4-bit, you can see there, the noise floor is like nearly a quarter of the way up there. With only 24 dB of dynamic range, that's why you get such noisy. And for those of us that recorded in the 8-bit days, this is why we had things like, in the early digital recordings, you had so much hiss and so much background noise, is that look at that noise floor compared to what we get now with 24-bit. It's just uncomparable, isn't it? So yeah, 24-bit. For the win, and that's why. No Apple product knowledge. Yeah, and that's the thing. This video, even though it's on GarageBand Weekly, it's going to be totally useful if you're using any other DAW. If you're on Cakewalk, if you're on Reaper, if you're on Logic, if you're on Fruity Loops, whatever it is, you'll be there. G'day, Signature Music Services. Thank you for dropping on by. If anyone has any questions, we do have a bunch of time here today. So feel free to throw Q or question in front of your question. and we will answer those as we go through. Let's us have a rant, shall we? I'm going to start my rant by playing a little piece of video, and I have approval from the wonderful Patrick over at GarageBand Guide to play the first minute of his video here, because this is going to set the scene for what I'm about to rant about. So take it away, Patrick. He'll talk for a minute here at the start of his video, and then I'm going to comment on what's going down here.
This is the new iPad Air 2. It's unbelievably gorgeous, and look how thin it is. Can you even see it?
8 years. Come this autumn, that's how long Apple will have been providing software support for this, the iPad Air 2, making it the longest supported iOS device ever. This year's release of iOS 16 will finally see support for this model end. But does that mean it's time to chuck your iPad Air 2 in the bin, or will it remain useful now and in years to come? Let's find out.
Good question, Patrick from the GarageBand Guide. I'm glad you asked, because that's what I wanted to rant about here today. So first and foremost, go and watch that whole video. It is only 10 minutes long. It is chock full of good information. Patrick's like a mad scientist in a laboratory testing out all the things. He throws GarageBand at it. He throws AUM at it. And spoiler alert, these things are pretty rock solid. There's a good reason why the iPad Air 2 has been one of the most popular iPads and the most popular iOS devices of all time, why it's had 8 years of support. Because when it came out, and I bought mine brand new, so I bought this literally 8 years ago when it was new. When it came out, it really was next level. Compared to the iPad Air 1, this just did a whole lot more, much more powerful processing, much better management of all of the apps and all of your processing. So is it the end of life of this thing? Well, as you can probably tell, if I put it around to that angle, you can see the extensive cracks that I have in mine. So let's just say that there was 7 years where this wasn't cracked, and then my children used it for the last year, and yeah. Those of you who have kids and devices know that they maybe don't take as good a care of them, and it fell to the floor, and the rest is history. So it does have a significant crack. Still works perfectly, still plays GarageBand, and I have a significant soft spot for this because I created an album called Selfish Aware in 2018, and I did it entirely on this. So this was the device I used. I used this with a Lightning to USB 3 adapter, my Steinberg UR12 interface, and plugged in microphones and guitars and recorded it, everything to this. And it didn't skip a beat. And when I say didn't skip a beat, there were a couple of times where it skipped a beat. So a couple of times when it got up to like 32 tracks, like I was really pushing the limits, or I was doing some mastering in Final Touch and I had like a whole array of plugins and things across it, then yeah, it slowed down a little bit. But the thing is, when I look at this now, I look at it with the eyes that I look at my iPad Pro 2020 with, and it feels a bit sluggish. But at the time, this was insane. Like, you got to remember that 8 years ago, other tablets that were being created, like by Samsung and Google, were terrible. They were running Windows Mobile, or they were running Android, like early versions of Android. They were so clunky, so sluggish, did not run anything, crashed constantly. So the iPad, from the first sort of versions and then up to the Air and then the Air 2, this is the sweet spot. This is where they hit gold and they hit pay dirt. So will I still be using this? Well, yeah, I think it'll still have a home here in the studio. It'll be stuck on iOS 15 forever, but iOS 15 is pretty good. And the thing about GarageBand is I've been covering GarageBand for close to 7 years now. It's not that much different. When I was first doing it on my iPhone 6S and my iPad Air 2, which are the two devices that are not going to be supported in the new version of iPad and iOS, it was very similar to this. There's been a few additions and a few things added. We've got 24-bit audio, which is great, as we were talking about before. We've got a lot better support for plugins and AUV3s and things. So yeah, there's a lot of cool things that have happened over that time. But yeah, it's still there. And they've never made a cover as good as this, the Logitech. These Logitech covers, I can't remember what they're called, these folding covers, despite the fact that it did in fact crack in the end. It only cracked because it had its cover open and fell. So I wish they still made these covers, but the little red and blue, the classic one that you've seen around this channel for a very long time, is still here. I'll still be hanging on to it. So that's my story. Your story might be different. And the reason I wanted this to be the rant is it's not time to throw away that gear. But a lot of people criticize companies for not supporting things, and it's weird. It's a bit like the new version of the iPad, where when it came out, the new M1 iPad, people are like, you can't use all the memory, and there's no apps that just require M1. So Apple said, okay, on these new M1 ones, we're going to open up all the memory, and here's some apps that you can only use on M1. And people are like, oh, why can't I use this on my non-M1 iPad? So it is kind of hard to win in that situation. So yeah. Let me know what your thoughts are. Do you have one of these older devices? Are you looking to upgrade? Is this going to push you along? And let's be honest, there's nothing, it's evolutionary, not revolutionary. So nothing's coming. Like at the moment, on this device, on my iPad Air 2, I can plug in a multi-channel audio interface and record 44.1 kilohertz, 24-bit audio, and record up to 32 tracks and process a whole bunch of plugins. I can do that. And then on an iPad 2021 M1 with 16 gig of RAM, I can record 44.1 kilohertz audio and multi-track into it. And yeah, so it's doing the same stuff. The audio quality itself is not actually going to change. And that's what I think people get a little bit caught up in. They're like, I need a new device so that my songs sound better. It's like, well, no. If you're having problems with crashing, if you're having problems with speed, if there's features that aren't supported, yes. But new gear very rarely makes your songs sound better. You know what makes your songs sound better? Practicing your songwriting and your recording techniques and learning how to mix and master. So I'll pause there and move on to our next topic here. Yeah, good stuff to Frigsy. Farewell. Yes, it's very late for Frigsy, so feel free to go to bed. Thomas is answering a question here for someone else, but I've missed the initial question. There it is, from Dan Ekberg Music, who says, I have a live streaming site where I can use my... Is there a live streaming site where I can use my iPad Air or StreamYard? On StreamYard, I had to use my wife's laptop to have sound. Yeah, so the problem is that a lot of the live stream... The reason that I'm not all mobile, because, you know, I got mobile devices out the wazoo around here, so I could have an all mobile setup. But yeah, audio is the biggest problem. Video is not a big deal because you can use the cameras. The built-in cameras are pretty good on all of your iOS devices. And there are things, and I think Thomas was talking about things like Streamlabs. There's a Streamlabs version. There's also something that I've forgotten the name of. Let's see if I can find it on my phone. I'll just scroll through my phone and look for it. But there's another streaming one that I've tried a while ago. It didn't quite do it for me. And I'm not going to be able to find it while we talk here because... that would be really boring, you watching me scroll through apps. But yeah, there are other options of things that basically take a bunch of different signals from a bunch of different iOS cameras and bring them together. The biggest problem I've had is with sound. So because, especially things like Restream and StreamYard, they don't have native iOS apps. I wish they did, but they don't. Meaning that you have to use them through a browser. And if you've ever used Chrome or Safari, the audio settings, even though if you plug in... So here's the deal. If you plug something in and then you go to the browser, it should use that device. So say you're using an audio interface or a mixer, it should use it. But in my experience, when you're using a browser on a mobile device, at random intervals, it'll just revert back to the built-in mic. Or when you load up a new app, or when you go to a website, or when you start a stream, like it's really difficult to get good quality audio into an iPhone or an iPad. I know Brad Example's struggling with this. Even things like the iRig Stream, they work great for native apps. If you're using the iRig app, if you're using the camera app even, it'll support whatever audio is in there, whatever you set it as. But as soon as you go into a browser and you try to do something with StreamYard, it's not so good. So I'm actually going to do some testing over the next week or so with things like using the direct YouTube app. Something I don't do very often, but yeah, it'll be good to know that. Trying out some of these other things like Streamlabs and the other one that I can't remember the name of. But it might just be a version of Streamlabs. But yeah, there are other options. I just haven't found a good way to do it. And unfortunately, it's the one thing, even though I'm a mostly mobile creator, the one thing I lean heavily on my desktops for and my laptop is streaming. Even when I'm doing my live gigs, I'd love to just be able to throw my phone up there because it's got a decent enough camera and then just have that through StreamYard. But I can't find a way to get the audio in and then into the browser to do it properly. And look, there's other browsers. Maybe I need to try something like the iCab mobile browser, tell it that it's a desktop browser. But yeah, it all comes down to iOS and audio. So there you go. I've done a video on a live streaming app, Dan. Is that the Ninja one that you're using? Cinemaker. There you go. Cinemaker. Nice. So I've not tried Cinemaker. Let's search about what that is. Let's find out. Let's learn together. This is proving that I don't. So Cinemaker is live video production tools for a new generation. So again, I think the challenge might be being able to implement this. Oh, this is cool. Maybe I'll try this out. I'll go watch Jay's video and then I'll try it out. The challenge might be being able to send that into. Yeah, so this is similar to the one I was thinking of. It's not, but it's similar. And you can start for free. So I'll have to find out what the paid versions are. But yeah, so I don't know if this is going to connect in with things like Restream or with StreamYard. But yeah, if there's ways to do that, if you can send it. And sometimes if you are controlling the StreamYard or the Restream, you can actually create it's RMTP, so you can do it. It gets a little complicated. I wish there was just an easier way to do it, but yeah, it looks like there's options out there. So go give it a go and see how. Yeah, go Cinemaker. Sounds delicious, doesn't it? Cinemaker. You can use your phone as a camera and the iPad as the streaming device. Yeah, that'd be cool. And that's the one that I was trying before. I had one that I was using where you could have multiple cameras, and I actually tried it at one point. And I had my iPad and you can use screen recording as well. So you can basically share your screen as one of the cameras using the screen recorder. So it was super cool, but it never quite worked the way I wanted it to. So. But yeah, it's one of the hardest things to do, and it's why desktops do still have a place for people doing streaming, at least for me. Coronavirus says I use first gen iPad every day. Functionality slowly slips away until it's a big iPad. Yeah, yep, exactly. It'll be a paperweight by and by. All right, so where are we at? We've got about 15 minutes left. Look, I've been really low on time this week. I'm going to be very honest with you. So I haven't really checked out anything new. It's why I haven't been able to catch up on all the latest shows that Jay is doing. It's why I haven't checked out. I've got a bunch of apps in the backlog that I need to check out. So what I'm actually doing this week is we're again, so I'm going to shout out to Bandlab. They are sponsoring. I'm just trying to get my iPad open again. They're sponsoring the Creator Town Hall throughout the month of June, and they're also sponsoring a series of videos. So there's 2 videos that are already out there, excuse me. So there's 2 videos. You'll find the Getting Started to Bandlab linked below, and there's 2 other videos that we've done this month as well around some cool Bandlab features, the Song Starter feature, and what was the last one we did? Isn't that terrible? I've forgotten what the last one we did was. I will remember. How bad is that? Short-term memory loss. It's the aging thing, people. But this week, I'm excited to say that we'll be checking out the Bandlab. No, that's Patrick. We'll be checking out the Bandlab mobile app because it is quite different using the mobile app compared to the desktop version. There's a lot of cool functionality in here. You can still use, it was the Bandlab sounds. Of course it was. I knew it would come back to me. So you can still use cool things like the Bandlab sounds, like I showed in the video this week. So if we come in here and open the studio, the layout here is quite similar. You can still add in everything. You can still use these cool Bandlab sounds and search through and bring in all the cool metal screams and all the other things that we play with in the video this week. But the actual interface is quite a bit different. So I'm learning it at the moment and learning how to use it and learning the key differences between this and the desktop app. And do I think this will ever replace GarageBand completely? No, but because it's got cool things like the Song Starter, it's got the Bandlab sounds, which is like 27,000 different loops and samples in there, I think this could be a cool way to integrate Bandlab Mobile with GarageBand iOS. Because I know a lot of people use GarageBand iOS, you've used it for a long time, and there's some sounds in there that you're looking for. And this does have some different strings and guitars, different organs, different keyboards, different sounds that you can incorporate in there. And some cool features like integration with audio stretch. So I think this might be a great solution for people that want to do beat matching, that want to stretch out audio in a quick and simple way. There are ways to do it, and other DAWs have been doing it for a long time. But GarageBand just doesn't play nicely with things like beat matching or with things like stretching out audio. And this might be a way to do it. So I'll be experimenting with that this week. We'll be doing a video, so keep an eye out for that one once I've learned all of the ins and outs. I'm getting better with it, but it's a weird thing. Like once you're used to something, and I'm just going to leave that there while I talk. And sorry, Patrick. I'm very used to GarageBand iOS now, to the point where as soon as I use something different, there's a bit of a steep learning curve. It does take a while to get used to it again. So I'm going to get used to it. So yeah, look, Patrick's pretty excited. Oh, horrible. I'm sorry. Alrighty. Patrick Chandler's got a question. Is it possible to use or connect digital reference speakers with iPad Pro UR22C? I have a pair of Roland DS90A reference speakers with optical and coaxial connections. So, short answer is no. The UR22C doesn't have optical output, so you can only go out via that. It's a very good question, and it's something that I don't use a lot. I haven't really had a need to, because I just use, like, my speakers just have standard TRS connections. So your standard audio devices will have an output that's either going to be XLR or it's going to be TRS. So something like the Steinberg UR22C has the TRS there. If you go with, is it the iRig? No, not the iRig Pro. What's the other? So something like my Zoom Live Track, the one that I'm using right now, it uses XLR output. So you can see there. I'll just bring up the bigger version. You can see there it's got XLR output. Now, more expensive and newer audio interfaces do have optical audio. Let's see if I can remember one that does. I'm pretty sure the Audient, the new Audient interfaces that Mike over at Creative Source reviewed recently do have optical. What was the one that he was using? Was it, that's the microphone preamp. Can anyone remember what it was that Mike was using? Was it the RD44? No, it was the Evo 16. It was this one, wasn't it? I think this one might have digital too, but let's just flip it around. Yeah, so yeah, look at all that. So this has got digital optical audio outputs, and inputs, in fact. So your higher end interfaces can definitely do that. And Audient are actually doing some good things these days, because for the longest time, a lot of this higher end gear couldn't be used with iOS because it wasn't class compliant. Whereas a lot of this newer stuff, I was actually chatting to Audient recently, a lot of this newer stuff can actually be used with iPhone and iPad. And this is the one that Mike was raving about, the Evo 16. So the Evo 4 and the Evo 8 have been out for a while. The Evo 16 is this one here, and it's got all the goodness that the regular Evos have, but there you can see, you've got optical out. So yeah, short answer for you is no, because your current gear, the UR22C, doesn't have optical out, and you can see the difference. Like, this is a $500 piece of kit compared to a $200 piece of kit, so you will pay more to get an audio interface with optical out. The bigger question is, do you need it? Is it going to make that much of a difference? Not in my experience. Obviously, you'll get a more direct signal out there. You won't have to worry about shielded cables or making sure that you're not getting any interference and you're getting the best, most pristine audio out to your speakers. But does it make much difference over analog? Not in my experience. If others have tried it out and swear by digital output for reference monitoring, then let me know. Let me know in the chat, or let me know. Yeah, so my PreSonus has SPDIF in and out. There you go. So PreSonus, let's see. What's your PreSonus, Gregory? Because maybe there's some cheaper options. PreSonus audio let's just put PreSonus audio interface, and we put SPDIF. Let's just see if that comes up here on the Sweetwaters. So this one, the 68 seems to, let's come over here. This seems to have SPDIF, which is your digital audio, or does it? No, that one just doesn't seem to have digital. So yeah, you're basically just looking for something that has digital audio. I'm on the wrong screen. You can't see that. Don't you hate that? So yeah, but there are others. So just look for digital audio. I'm not sure that I'd lose a lot of sleep over it, but yeah, it may be worth looking at. Hello, Clayton von Cluj. I hope you are doing well. Thank you for dropping on by. We'll see if we've got any other questions before we... Yeah, Patrick does look like he's singing in a choir, doesn't it? Should we do it one more time? Patrick's going to kill me. But everyone go promote his video. Go watch his video now, because I feel bad because I keep showing this photo. Let's move him onto a different screen, shall we? It's not better. No, not better. Not better. Okay. You know what? Just for revenge, how about we do this? Because I want to make sure that... Yeah, look. Let's get a really weird freeze of me. There you go. So I'm going to leave that one on there now just to show that I'm an equal opportunity shamer, and I'm shaming myself as much as everyone else. Hello, Scott Anderson. I hope you are doing well, my friend. Thank you for dropping on by. It is the Studio 68C. So maybe it does have digital there. I couldn't see it on there, but yeah, maybe it's a slightly different version that has the digital. But yeah, there's definitely options. And I think Focusrite, I think things like the 18i8 might even have digital. Basically, yeah, it's very few of your two-channel. I think they think that anyone that's got a two-channel interface is not going to really care about optical, so they don't put it on there. They only put it on the larger interfaces with more inputs and outputs. Let's go even bigger there. We'll go with that, just to shame myself for a little bit while we talk about so tip of the week. In fact, this is a good segue, because this video here is all about recording audio, and I got a question this week from folks who are asking. I'll just play this in the background while we chat here. So they were asking about, this is weird, a bit meta here. They were asking about the difference between MIDI and audio. So I think there's still some confusion, but that's a weird effect. I don't use that very often anymore, do I? With the thing in the corner. It's kind of cool. So there's a question there between recording audio and MIDI, and it's actually pretty simple, but it can get confusing. So MIDI is not sound. The way that I always explain it is that MIDI is not audio. MIDI is data. So there is no sound involved in MIDI. So if you plug your keyboard in like I've done here, and you're recording and you want to play something in GarageBand using the strings or the keyboards or the organ or a virtual instrument in GarageBand, you need to actually have a MIDI keyboard that sends that data out via a USB cable or a MIDI cable into your machine, into your iPad, your iPhone, your Mac, your PC, and then it's that device that's creating the sound. If you want to capture the sound of your actual keyboard, if you've got a synthesizer, you've got a keyboard, and you want that sound, you need an audio interface. And that's what I'm showing here. You need to actually physically plug out from either a line output or a headphone jack, because I've got a dodgy piano that doesn't have line out, and plug into an audio interface. In this one, I'm just using my little IXZ or IXZ, which is a little Tascam audio interface that has instrument input. So that will record the actual sound. So basically, if you're recording MIDI, it's virtual, it's data. If you want to record the actual sound of things, you need to have an audio interface. And you can record both. So a lot of keyboards have both MIDI and have a line output, and you can record them both. You can even record them both at the same time, which is kind of trippy. So if you've got a powered USB hub, you can actually plug in an audio interface, set that up on one channel, and then plug in your MIDI keyboard and set that up as a virtual instrument on another channel. And so you can sort of have the best of both worlds there if you want to. If you want to record in the MIDI and then quickly swap over and record in a sound. There's actually some cool sounds. There was one song that I did, and I can't remember which one it was now, where there was a particular sound on my piano, which is like these chimes, these vibe chimes, that like the ones you hear in the airport, where it goes doo, 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 doo. Now, Qantas Airlines now boarding flight 670 to Melbourne. So yeah, if you want to get the sounds that are actually on your device, you need an audio interface. If you just want to use your virtual instruments, you only need MIDI. And as Brian says, MIDI is low latency, audio is crap latency. So yeah, you are going to have latency when it comes to actually recording. And if you've only ever recorded MIDI, it will take some adjusting, because depending on the audio interface you're using, you are going to get some round trip latency. Now, if you've got good quality gear, or if you use the direct monitoring option, then you're going to get lower latency. And the good news is that using recording in from your instrument, if you turn on either the zero latency or what's called zero latency monitoring or direct monitoring, you're going to hear the whole sound. It's not like a guitar where you're using a virtual amp sim or something, or a vocals where you need that. If you're just playing in a piano part, don't bother putting on the monitoring through your DAW. Just monitor direct through the audio interface, and then you will get the same sound at the same time. You'll hear it exactly the same. You may still get a little bit of recording latency, in which case you may have to nudge your audio backwards or forwards, a couple of milliseconds, but it's going to work well. It'll work for you. G'day, Brad. Example, can I take an audio instrument track? I used the GarageBand bass, copy it and paste the same notes into a different instrument. Sub bass. I tried to do it and couldn't figure it out. Audio instrument track. I used to, yes. Some instruments, Brad. So the problem is some, but not all. And you know what? I knew that we did this for a reason. Remember at the start of the show where I just loaded up a bass track here in GarageBand for no apparent reason? I just happened to know that Brad was going to come by and ask that exact question. So we have a bass track. We want it onto another track. Now, I think the problem's going to be that the guitars don't play nicely with the other instruments. So let's give this a crack in real time. So if we just grab the keyboard here, we'll just go into a standard keyboard here, keyboards. And if there is I've got a feeling in the back of my head there's a workaround for this, but I can't remember. So this one here. Yeah, no, it needs to be use a keyboard or sampler region here. So yes, there's the problem is that you can't do that. So you can't move between guitars and keyboards or strings. You can't move between strings and guitars and keyboards. You can't move between keyboards and guitars and strings, which is stupid because they're actually all the exact same instrument, but they won't actually work. So you can see we won't be able to paste it in there. It'll paste it in its own separate track, but it creates a guitar track. So I don't believe, I know there's a workaround for drums, for going from drummer to drums, and there was one, wasn't there? There was a hack that I showed with strings way back in the day. I'm going to have to try and find it now. Pete Johns, strings copy, what was it? Record string, complete guide to string to keyboard. I'm going to have to watch my own video to find out how. Let's just turn this up. GarageBand, and how to do it in reverse, how to take an instrument on the keyboard and send it over to the strings. It's very cool, and I'm going to show you how. Let's go. All right, just show me, Mr. Man. All right, strings to keys. As many folks as possible. Step one, we need to create a new project here in GarageBand and come over and grab our we're going to try this
so that we can play.
Sorry, we are over time here, but I want to try and solve this right now.
We can use the autoplay or however you want to do this. We're just going to use autoplay number one.
Really do talk too much
D minor
sometimes.
chord and record in some strings. So the track view. And it doesn't matter, you can record nothing at all. What I then like to do is grab this track and just drag it to the top here.
That's
so
right.
That you've got that in track one and then your strings in track two. We will close out by tapping in the top.
That's right,
there.
it's a bit clunky.
And what I like to do is just
You've got to create a new
project.
project.
Let's just call this strings so that we know that this is our strings project and we're done. Next step is to create our keys track so that we can transfer our strings over. So let's do that now. Once again, we're going to tap on create song. This time I'll do the audio recorder first.
See, people say I talk too fast and go too fast. I think I talk too slow.
Once again, record a little bit of nothing and then come back to our track view by tapping on this button here.
Right, that's right. You need an audio track at the top.
Keyboard track. Now you can use any keyboard instrument. If we hit the plus button here, we're going to scroll across and find our keyboard and tap on that one. Now let's put the oboe on here. That could be an interesting one. Let's leave it with oboe, but you could of course use any.
Move
I'll
on.
show you the power of this one here. So now we can name this one and call this one keys. We are set up and ready to go. Let's show you the super secret special final step that makes this.
What is it? This could have been a 2-minute video, Sunshine.
The strings here, and what we want to do now is copy
Select
all
all.
of these. So we want to tap out here in the blank space and hit select all.
Got it.
And then just tap anywhere in either of these. Tap again.
Got it.
And hit the copy button. That's going to copy both of these tracks. We can then close out of this by using the top left button here.
And then we paste it
open
into
up
keys.
our keys track.
All right, where do
and
we
we're
paste
ready
it?
to paste in.
Where?
Now, the secret to getting this to work is to make sure that you select that first track there. You can then tap on the actual blue section here, tap again and hit paste. And drum roll, please. Boom.
All right, let's try this, shall we? I've learnt from myself, and now I'm going to try. Now I'm going to try to replicate what I just showed there over here on my own iPad. All right, so if this is Brad. This is Brad with his track there. He's got his bass track, and he's like, I want to put this to a different instrument. So if I'm listening to that weird guy that just spoke, I need to record some audio onto this. Yeah, we can turn on the monitoring. Doesn't matter what we record. Blah, la, la, la. There we go. We got some audio. And we can put that onto the top of this one. Go to the back. Go to the start. All right. So we'll just change the order of that just to make it consistent. We'll save out of that one. This is going to be the bass line that we have. And you might have to just use a second project to send it across and then send it back, Brad. So if we'll create a new song and we'll, what do we need to do? We need the audio recorder track again. Bop, 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 bop. Yeah, girl. All right. So we've got a yeah, girl track there. We'll come back to here, and we just need to create any keyboard track. So let's go create a keys track. Burp. And sure, it can be an 80s bitrate synth, because why not? And this one's going to be our next track. So we can just close out of there and call this our keys track, just like the old man on the video said. And then if we grab our bass, let's see, because this works for strings. I can't see why it wouldn't work for bass. So we need to tap out here. We need to select all. And then we need to tap again and copy all this business. Oh, I've lost my mouse died. Oh, there he is. Copy. And then we'll go back. And then the drum roll, please. Let's tap it. Let's tap it. And let's, oh, no, I've got to tap out here, do I? And paste. Oh, boom. Hello. There we go. Okay, it worked. Who knew? Let's play it. La 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 la. That sounds actually pretty cool on the synth. That actually sounds better on the synth than it did on the bass. That's cool. Okay, so there you go. It works. Brad, I may have to do that as a video this week, my friend. How to convert your guitars to your keyboards. That's really cool, because that way you could use any of your auto plays for your bass or your guitars or anything that you've created on a guitar track. You can use the same thing. Thank you, my friend. I hope that helps you out. You've given me the video that I'm going to make this week. So you can all look very surprised when I make that video. Sorry to pause on that one, but I thought it was a really good question, and I thought it was something that we could solve on the spot. So hopefully that works. Can you link the video on the chat for Brad? Yeah, let's do that. I'll throw a link to the video so that you can follow through yourself and get that done again, or just watch what I did there because it's much quicker. the 2 minutes I took to actually do it there would have been a lot easier for you than having to watch that original video, which maybe I need to go back and redo. I'll just scroll back up. We are over time here, but I did want to do that. Yeah, that's right. Younger Pete saved the day. I'd forgotten about that, but I had that in the back of my head that you could do it. Yeah, you can trick it with copy paste. Exactly. Spot on. You can do it with multiple projects. That's what you need to do. So that's it. Got it. Yep, so I wanted to move the sub bass to a keys track. So there you go. That's what you can do to move your bass to a regular MIDI one. And yeah, I wasn't sure if the trick still worked either, because I thought they nerfed one of them. So I'm not sure that the drummer to drums one still works. I'll have to recheck that one. Maybe there's a whole bunch of GarageBand hacks in my future. Like, let's go back and check the hacks and see what works and what doesn't. So yeah, tip of the week, MIDI to audio, MIDI versus audio. Now, the one thing you can't do, of course, easily is convert audio to MIDI, or MIDI. You can convert MIDI to audio, but audio to MIDI doesn't really work. So just for completion there, if you did ever want to convert a MIDI track to audio for whatever reason, say you wanted to throw it on an audio track, because your MIDI tracks here are pretty cool, but you don't get a whole lot of plugin space there. So if you ever got a track here that you want to convert, obviously you can use the very handy dandy merge function, and that's going to merge down a virtual track and turn it into an audio track. And then the cool thing about that is you get a whole bunch of plugin space here. So you can remove that and you can add in your compressor, your visual EQ, and up to 4 different effects on your track, and it's going to sample that down. Obviously you lose the ability to edit it, but it is a way to do that. And it's actually cool because if you're going to export it as stems or use it in a different platform, sometimes you'll want audio files as opposed to those MIDI files anyway. Very cool. I like it. Let's close up. Let's wrap up here, because I think yes, it also normalizes. So you would have noticed there. That's a really good point, Clayton. It also normalizes, which means it increases the volume of your track as well. So you may need to throw the volume down a little bit if you do merge a track, because it will normalize it. And unfortunately, a lot of people ask me this. There is no merge in GarageBand Mac. Alas, you have to export it, you have to solo it, export it, and then import it back in. It's a bit of a bugger. I think that's it. Let me just check my name. Yes. So the only other thing to tell you is that if you want even more support for your GarageBand, especially GarageBand iOS, jump on over here to my GarageBand FAQ, where I've got linked all of the different playlists of videos that we have here on the channel, and every question answered is down here. Maybe I need to update this, because I don't think I have the next level stuff like Brad was asking here. Otherwise, I would have been able to send him here and say, oh, there's how you convert your keys to your guitars to your keys, and vice versa. Wonder if you can go keys to guitars. Probably not. So yes, and there you go. There's the link. Thank you, Thomas, for the link to the link to the spot that you can go to. Is Rock and Ronnie Ward live today? For those that are watching here on the live, let's just check out. I think he usually goes live right after me here on GarageBand Weekly. Yeah. Should we have a live look in on Rock and Ron? Let's see what Ron's up to.
DJ Kobe on bass. And of course, Laura's
There's the
mishmash
man.
on keys.
The man with the
I have
plan.
no idea what it is. She says there are wigs. Let's go.
Right. So yeah, go check out Rock and Ronnie Ward now, and over there at GBU. What is it? Not GBU Live. What does he call himself these days? Homegrown Indie Live. I'm going to throw a link there. Let's get our raid on. Let's go over there and say g'day to Rock and Ron. Even if you can't hang out for the show, go over and say g'day to Ron and the crew. Tell them that Pete sent you and says hi. And that's all for today, folks. That's all, folks. If you're watching on the replay, don't worry. We love you just as much. Drop your comments down below. If you have any questions, of course, you can ask them in the comments as well. I'm always down there trying to help out as best that we can. And until next time, please be kind to yourselves. Be kind to others. Keep creating. Oh, and Glenn Clark on the Creator Town Hall this week. That's going to be epic. So I'll see you on that one. And that's all for this GarageBand Weekly. Bye for now.
College, what he doesn't know, we'll try and find out.
That was weird. Let's try that again. Bye. Let's go watch Ron. Wigs for the win. Bye, folks.